It is the top of the hour. I am going to end our poll and get us started. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. This is the National Girls Collaborative National Webinar, Neurodiversity in STEM Education. Just to let you know some of our webinar logistics, right now, as you entered the room, you will have noticed your microphones are muted, and we've also deactivated webcams. We ask that you keep those off during the presentation, but you are welcome to use them during the Q&A at the end. Please utilize our chat for comments and questions throughout the presentation. We also have closed captioning occurring. To turn that on, you can go to the 3 dots in your Zoom setting, and you can either click View Subtitle or View Full Transcript, and that will allow you to follow along with the closed captioning. I'm seeing some people saying that I am talking, but they cannot hear me. I'm wondering if others are also having that problem. Okay, some folks are saying they can hear me fine. So I apologize to whomever that was having trouble hearing me. Perhaps try logging out and logging back in, or try increasing your volume. But we're going to get started. So here we go. So I'm going to give a brief introduction of the National Girls Collaborative Project before I turn it over to our speakers for today. The vision of the National Girls Collaborative Project is to bring together organizations committed to encouraging girls to pursue careers in technology, engineering, mathematics, and computer science. The photos you see here are just one example of how we facilitate discussion among stakeholders by offering structured networking activities at every NGCP event and local collaborative event. During collaboration networking, dynamic discussions between individuals matching needs and resources can highlight ways for organizations to work together to impact the youth they are serving. NGCP has several goals. We all know that there is a diversity of high-quality resources available, and many of you have little time to search for the strategies and content to improve your program. NGCP helps you address this need via our website, our newsletters, online databases, social media, and webinars just like this one. NGCP also seeks to strengthen the capacity of programs by sharing exemplary practices, research, and program models. When programs are stronger and more sustainable, girls are better served. We distribute these resources in an accessible format via train-the-trainer programs, partnerships, and online platforms. And finally, we use the leverage of a network and collaboration of girl-serving STEM programs and champions to create the tipping point for gender equity in STEM. The National Girls Collaborative Project engages in a number of activities virtually and nationally, as well as through local collaboratives. NGCP partners with organizations to scale and deliver content such as Leap into Science National Network in partnership with the Franklin Institute and Crypto Club in partnership with the University of Chicago, both funded by the National Science Foundation, several serving hundreds of educators via statewide networks. NGCP also manages the Connectory, the largest national database of STEM opportunities. The Connectory also provides a way for program providers to connect and collaborate with each other. FabFems is an international database of female role models from many STEM fields. They are passionate about the work they do and are ready to connect with programs to spark girls' interests. NGCP is also working with the Lyda Hill Philanthropies and has launched the If Then collection, a digital library housing photos, videos, and other media of women in STEM fields. These media are available at no cost. We also offer regular webinars like this one, focused on research and exemplary practices to help our network grow and thrive. Locally, state collaborative leadership teams offer convenings of educators and researchers for professional development. They offer mini grants for innovative projects when funding is available and distribute their own regular newsletters spotlighting local resources. The National Girls Collaborative Project has been partially funded by the National Science Foundation since 2002. We began as the Northwest Girls Collaborative Project focused on Washington and Oregon, and then as we presented our collaboration model to others, we were invited to expand across the United States. While NGCP programs and partners are located in every state, we have a collaborative leadership teams in 41 states. Today, NGCP facilitates conversations between more than 38,000 organizations serving 20 million girls and 12 million boys as well, since many of the organizations serving girls are also serving boys with engaging STEM curriculum and activities. And now I have the pleasure of introducing our two speakers today. First, we have Sarah Sanders Gardner. Sarah is the designer and program director at Bellevue College's nationally recognized Neurodiversity Navigators program, now in its 10th year. In addition to work for Bellevue College, Sarah leads training sessions with prospective managers in preparation for hiring events and with hiring managers and team peers of individuals hired through the Microsoft Autism Hiring Program in the United States. Sarah began working in the disability field 18 years ago when a family member received an autism diagnosis. Sarah's intense study led to receiving an autism diagnosis and a career shift from sales to disability advocate, trainer, and president of a 700-member support group in Orange County, California. Sarah does not use pronouns. We also have Eleanor Gaitan here with us today. Eleanor is an autism behavior technician and biochemistry student at California State University, Fresno. This semester, she will be developing her first research study as a participant in programs including the Lewis-Stokes Alliance for Minority Participation and the Research Training Initiative for Scientific Enhancement. Eleanor has been self-diagnosed since her introduction to an autistic child who bore a remarkable resemblance in behavior to herself. Barriers to assessment and interactions with many individuals on the spectrum have inspired her quest to become a neuroscientist specializing in autism research. And I also have to add that we found both Sarah and Eleanor through Stairway to STEM, which is an organization that provides resources for autistic students transitioning from high school to college, particularly in the science, technology, engineering, and mathematics fields. So I'm now going to turn it over to Sarah. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Marissa. I really appreciate you having me here today. And I'm going to see if I can control the PowerPoint now. I am here from Bellevue College, and I wanted to point out that our program is a cohort program under the RISE Learning Institute, and Bellevue College also has a STEM to STERN cohort program under the RISE Learning Institute as well. Yes, I can move the slides. Okay, so the first thing I want to talk about, oh no, they're moving too fast for me for some reason. I'm trying to make them go back. Okay. First thing I want to talk about is the language that I use when I talk about disabled people and autistic people and neurodivergent people. I use, oh, that's not the right slide. Oh, this is not working correctly. Let's see. Sorry, we practiced, but it's going different. Okay, all right. I use identity first language, which is to say disabled person, autistic person. There is also person first language. And the most important thing to know is that there isn't a right or wrong. It's up to the disabled person or the person with the disability themselves, which one they want to use. And so if you find that you need to talk about the disability or you need to talk about something like that with the person, you should be asking them or listening to hear what terminology they're using and honor that terminology. If you are writing a paper or addressing a larger audience, you should mix them up. So use person with a disability or disabled person back and forth, but with a one-on-one with the person, you should honor the language that they use. In my case, that's identity first. So I would say disabled person, autistic person, like that. Okay, so some quick definitions before we get started again. Neurodiversity refers to the diversity of human brains. It refers to the whole group of people and all the different diversities. Neurodivergent is the individual who has a brain that diverges from the typical majority, the dominant societal standards. So sometimes you'll hear people calling a person neurodiverse. A person themselves cannot be neurodiverse, they're neurodivergent. It's okay if you mix them up, but someone may correct you along the line. And then neurotypical is an individual whose neurocognitive functioning falls within those dominant societal standards. Some people may call them normal, but neurotypical is a better description. I believe you'll have access to the slide deck so you can follow the links and find out more information about these definitions from those links. And then this is just kind of some of the diagnoses that fall under this neurodiversity umbrella. We've got autism, which is the big one that a lot of people think of when they think of neurodiversity, but there's also dyslexia, dyspraxia, Tourette's, dyscalculia, ADHD, mental health diagnoses, lots of different things. I do want to, now that we're moving into thinking about interacting with, working with, supporting neurodivergent individuals, I want to talk about the medical model versus the social justice model. And sometimes it's called the deficit model or the prescriptive model versus the descriptive model. And it's really important to, in order to allow a neurodivergent person to access their strengths, to focus more on a social justice or descriptive model where you are looking for barriers to access rather than trying to fix the person. Rather than trying to make everyone act the same way or fit into a typical mold, broaden your definition of what is acceptable and what is how a person should behave, and instead seek to empower that person within their strengths, and rather than seeing the person as the problem. And there's a lot more to be learned about those different models as well, but basically, instead of trying to paint that red apple green, allow the apples to be the way the apples were meant to be. So it's not a disabled dog, it's a cat. So let's take a look at what some of those barriers are. There can be barriers in the environment, barriers in communication, and then just attitudinal barriers that come from a different understanding of culture. So some of the environmental barriers that are there for neurodivergent people, lighting. So we're thinking about sensory processing difficulties. Whether you're in a lab, a classroom, or some other type of meeting, you want to make sure that you can dim the lighting, or you have lots of natural lighting come in. You have areas where it's less bright. You want to make sure that there are some quiet areas available, or areas where people can talk and areas where people don't talk. Maybe install some sound blocking. Or have some retreat areas where people can go and just work by themselves. Another thing that's really, really important for neurodivergent people is to have very clear signage. Make sure, let's say you're setting up a lab in a classroom area or even remotely, make sure that you've got very clearly written directions, very clear signs where things are stored, very clear steps laid out how things are supposed to be done. And maybe check it with someone else who's not familiar with your pedagogy, so that you know that it's understandable to someone who doesn't know what you're talking about. And then also make sure that you provide options for socializing and for meeting participation that is not, it runs along universal design. So not everyone has to talk, for example. They can use the chat, they can keyboard answers, things like that. So that's thinking about the environment. Now, to think about culturally, this, and I apologize, this is so small. There is a link, you can find the picture. This is Edward T. Hall's Cultural Iceberg. And Edward T. Hall when he designed the cultural iceberg, he was a cultural anthropologist who specialized in nonverbal communication. And this is really important because autistic people and many neurodivergent people have a nonverbal learning disability. And so what Edward T. Hall said was that when we look at a culture, we are often think of this surface culture things. So we're thinking about the language, we're thinking about the language, we're thinking about the books, we're thinking about the dances, games, arts and crafts, literature, things like that. But what really make up a culture are these deep culture things that Edward Hall said you have to live in the culture and learn through nonverbal observation. They aren't taught didactically in the culture. So things like communication styles and rules, eye contact, body language, conversational patterns in different social situations, notions of courtesy and manners, concepts of self and time, attitudes towards different people in your life, approaches towards decision-making, problem solving, tone of voice, all sorts of different things. When I first saw this cultural iceberg, I was very excited because all of these things in the deep culture are the things that autistic people get in trouble for all of the time. And the reason for that is that we're not picking up how we're supposed to behave in our culture. And so sometimes people think, well, we'll just put you in social skills classes and you can learn what you're supposed to learn. And here's the fallacy with that. The problem is that these deep culture expectations are very fluid, and they're not just one set of rules that everyone follows all the time. Every classroom, every family, every group of friends, every business team, work team, every city, every state, every country has different rules that they follow, different expectations around these deep culture things. So for example, when I was a child, one friend's house, we could jump on the furniture and swear, and another friend's house, we couldn't. And I had no idea which was which. And other children could observe that pretty quickly after they entered the house. I don't know how they picked it up, but they did. So if you take an autistic person and you teach them some sort of unknown social skills, and they move from Seattle, Washington, which is where I live right now, to Buffalo, New York, which is where I used to live, they will be lost, or vice versa. My Buffalo, New York social skills are far too direct for the Seattle, don't ever tell anyone what you're thinking social skills. So I know my Seattle colleagues are laughing right now. So anyway, just something to know. A better takeaway for you from this slide is whenever someone, and you don't have to know if they're autistic or not, is behaving in a way that is different from your cultural expectations from any of these deep culture areas, take a step back and do something that a friend of mine calls manage your stories. Manage what you're telling yourself about what they mean by what they're doing or what they're saying, and instead ask a question. Are you angry with me? I'm not sure I know what you meant by that. Could you say it again in a different way? Or I'm not sure I made myself clear. Let me try to say this again. Likewise, manage your own boundaries around these things. If someone is standing too close to you and you need some more personal space, don't make it their problem. Just say, oh, you know what? I need a little more personal space. I'm going to move over here. So handle these things on your own. Don't make it about the other person. So I do, along these lines, want to talk about the different ways to communicate. There's direct, concrete, logical, and detailed, indirect, abstract, emotional, and general. Of course, there are also different ways. But the takeaway from this slide is that if someone is communicating in a way that's different from the way you're communicating, and there's a communication misunderstanding, see if you can slide more in their direction so that your communication matches up better. And that's really all there is to that. Just see if you can match communication styles a little bit better. The research is now showing that neurodivergent people socialize just fine and communicate just fine with other neurodivergent people. It's just when there's a communication mismatch that there's a problem. So here's more about that nonverbal communication. In our Western society, it's said that up to 85% of our communication is nonverbal, and there's many elements of this, as you can see, facial expressions, tone, body language, eye gaze, appearance, etc. And also for our purpose, the unspoken, implied, or hidden meaning within spoken communication. So a faculty member said to me recently that they said to their student, you might want to think about changing this part of your project. And the student didn't change it. And they said after my training, they realized that they hadn't really told the student to change it. They just said, you might want to think about changing it. And so that's kind of an implied, you might want to change it, when they really meant you should change this part. And so again, it's when there is a misunderstanding, someone doesn't appear to be doing what you've asked them to do, think back to, am I being clear? And then maybe add some more direct communication if you need to. And keep in mind that these vary across cultures and within cultures. So the student isn't necessarily even neurodivergent if they're not picking up on your implied meaning. I do want to talk a little bit more about language and stress. And they put the link for you for plain language in a little bit earlier. This is language that is, the wording, structure, and design are so clear that the intended readers can find what they need, understand it, and use it. So there's 3 parts to plain language. And I put the little link down here in the flowers because that's pretty much where a lot of people hide their important message, is in all the flowery and emotion behind their message. So what we want to do instead is make sure that we're very, very clear. So often we'll see things like this, and this is found a lot sometimes in assignment instructions as well, and in emails, where we put in a lot of excess information and don't make things clear. So that you'll see this is written in the third person, the applicant should submit, blah, 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 all these things in this like run-on paragraph. Instead, plain language says it right to the person: to apply, submit the following items, and then gives this bulleted list, and then tells them how to submit it, exactly where. So it's much clearer once you apply the principles of plain language. Now, if you go to that plain language site, you can actually complete a module on how to implement plain language, and your writing will be much clearer after you do that, if you implement it. So these are just some of the best practices that we've gone over already. Be direct and concrete if your communication isn't coming through, if you have kind of a communication mismatch. Put things in writing. This is really important. One thing I didn't mention about the environment, and I think this is important, especially if you are a science teacher, and that is sometimes handwriting can be very difficult. So if you've got lab notebooks that people are expected to fill out, this kind of goes along the universal design. Allow people to fill out those lab books in different ways. If they need to type their responses, allow them to do that. If you still need it in a book, just let them 3-hole punch those pages and put them in the book. Don't make people write in a lab book if they have a handwriting problem. You should be putting things in writing, following up with emails, giving sticky notes, sending. So that's a really good question. I'm going to answer that question. How do you know if you're dealing with a neurodiverse person? Someone should be asking for accommodations. So if they say, I can't write in the notebook, that's a good clue. And then anytime you're having a communication breakdown is when you should bring in any of these communication things. So you don't have to know if someone is neurodivergent or autistic to bring in these communication tools. They're really helpful for any student or any person that you're having a communication breakdown with. And then these are just good practices, right? Following up with emails and meeting notes. Make sure that the person knows where to find written instructions. Encourage multiple means of communication during meetings, etc. So allow people to communicate via keyboarding or talking or using the chat. Create that accessible environment. So, right, you can apply universal design, will help lots of people. Provide clear wayfinding information. Make sure people can find their way online and in the physical environment. Remember cultural differences. And this is true for all people, not only neurodivergent people. Ask for clarification rather than taking offense at tone of voice or direct feedback, right? Manage your stories. Accept questions readily, encourage asking for help, and recognize that when communication difficulties or differences happen, so respond to them in a culturally responsive manner. Be quick to recognize efforts and remain positive. This green flowered elephant is to remind me to tell you if you want someone to change what they're doing or stop what they're doing, tell them what you'd like them to do instead. So if I don't want you to think about a green flowered elephant, I'm going to say, please think about a pink butterfly, and I won't mention the green flowered elephant. So remember my blood type and be positive. And then these are just some resources for you, some that have already been mentioned. I do want to point out there's a cognitive accessibility of web technologies, and then University of Washington Do It program. I think Tammy Tidwell is on the call, has a lot of great universal design, but I pulled out their universal design for information technology for you right here. So that is it for me.
Thank you so much, Sarah. I'm just going to quickly get myself back here as we turn it over to a conversation with Eleanor Gaitan, who is our other speaker today. So welcome, Eleanor.
Hello.
Thank you so much for being here with us today. Eleanor, as I mentioned earlier, is currently a student at the University of, I'm trying to find, I was like, where did I put it? At California State University, Fresno. So we're going to go through some questions with Eleanor, and at the end, we'll open it up to questions from the audience. So here we go. So Eleanor, our first question is, what inspired you to study biochemistry and neuroscience?
Well, I started with a biology associates of science, which was a lot of fun, but I found that I was really enjoying chemistry a lot more. And so I know that to go into neuroscience, obviously I need a really strong basis in biology, but I also want a really strong basis in chemistry and other things too. There's a lot of different ways to go into neuroscience, but I felt like this was a really solid path for me because I am really mathematically driven. And, you know, I do have a desire to move on to neuroscience, and most of the program, actually every program I've seen says that biochemistry is awesome. So that's where we're going.
Great. And thinking back to your experiences in grades K through 12, what made science learning and learning about STEM easier for you as a person who considers yourself autistic?
Well, I had, when I was little, I had access to the Gifted and Talented Education Program available in the Tulare Unified School District in California. And what that meant is that every one day a week, I'd be bused around to each of the schools that had a gifted student, as we were considered. And then we were taken to, it was actually the Adult Learning Center, but they had this really cool room, and it was a small class. There was only maybe about 6 to 8 of us at any given time. It was all on our grade level. And we were given close attention by a teacher who had specialized in sciences. And I think that afforded me a lot of really cool opportunities to get involved. You know, we got to strap like G-force packs onto our bodies and then go ride roller coasters for free. And like, that was just so cool. And at the time, I guess I didn't realize that scientists could be a job. And when I found that out later in life, I was like, oh my gosh, you know, my childhood dreams are coming true. I can be a scientist. You know, I think having my teacher, who was really, really awesome, her name was Mrs. Gordon, and she was so passionate and excited about what she was doing. That meant a lot to me.
Thank you. And so you mentioned kind of that experience of being able to strap on the G-force and go ride roller coasters. Was it the hands-on components of STEM that felt like they got you excited?
Oh, absolutely. I had you know, a project where we were doing animals, and my parents actually got me 3 corn snakes, and I got to do not experiments, but I got to like you know, study them and watch them, see them eat and stuff like that. So it was all these hands-on experiences that were so important. Lots of modeling. I just thought that the scientific models were incredible. We had a lot of like Lego robotics. Um, just other fun things going on in that classroom. It was an experience that you just wouldn't get in a typical classroom, at least at the time.
Great. And so now for the flip side of that conversation, what made some of your K-12 learning more challenging?
Teamwork. I have not been very good at teamwork ever in my life. It is still a struggle. I try to do better, and I do think I'm better at it now, but it's really hard to focus on what you're doing when you just can't connect with the other people in your team. So, you know, if I didn't have options, and, you know, with only 6 to 8 students in the room, there's really only so much option. You know, it made it hard to focus. And even in, say, high school courses and stuff like that, there's such an emphasis on teamwork. And I do understand why teamwork is such a big deal. I'm not saying don't do teamwork. I'm just saying that it is something to consider for neurodiverse students. It's very difficult for us sometimes to be put in this situation where people who may not even like us kind of now have a lot of reign over our grades and how we present ourselves to other people. And I think that can be a really hard pill to swallow as someone who already feels really, really misunderstood.
Thank you. I really appreciate your honesty in that response. What study habits or skills have you developed to help you succeed in your university career?
I think a lot of them are actually pretty typical. Well, they're things that professors want you to do, but maybe not things that necessarily students go and do. So, you know, I always make sure to read before class. I know a lot of students don't do that, but if you if you view class as more of a review of what you've already learned, then to me that's a lot easier. I may have a very different mode of learning than the way that the teacher is teaching. And I think I can integrate what they're saying a lot easier if I already have kind of a foundation of what I believe to be true. And if I have to adjust that a little bit, I think that's a great time to do it. I like to watch visually presented information. So maybe I will read the book, but then I'll also go and do some YouTube videos. I will practice with the expected format. So let's say, you know, even in like calculus and things like that, it would be best if I use the calculator that I plan on using during an exam. It won't help me to use my phone because then I'm going to have developed a muscle memory that doesn't really suit the situation. And my absolute favorite thing to do, which I think is pretty funny because I had just mentioned that I really don't like teamwork, is that I really enjoy teaching as a form of learning. And what that means to me is I can get together a study group and we can talk about the answers. And if they don't have the right answer, we can talk about not necessarily what the correct answer is right away, but how do we get to that correct answer? I'm in organic chemistry right now, and I believe that a lot of people look at organic chemistry as being a subject that you memorize, but I have virtually no ability to memorize in the short term. Very difficult for me. What I like to do is understand what are the modes behind it. I think if I have a good foundational knowledge of how bonds move or things like that, then I'll have a much easier time with understanding with different molecules. If I know that a single bond can rotate, it doesn't really matter what molecule it is, as long as I know that, you know, it has a single bond right there.
I love that. Teaching as a form of learning. That's great. All right. What advice would you give to STEM teachers who are working to support neurodiverse students?
I think this goes very much into what Sarah mentioned. I think it's really helpful to provide samples. That includes defining clear expectations, but it also gives you a model to work off of. I find that I can present information, but not necessarily in a way that the teacher wanted me to do. I lost a lot of points on my very first biology exam because I put my information in bullet points. He did not want that. He wanted sentences. I didn't know that. So, you know, after that, now I knew. Never had a problem. I aced the class. You know, I'm happy with that. Something that I really like to have in the syllabus is a calendar. A lot of syllabi do not include a calendar, but I operate almost exclusively out of a planner. It's very important to me to know what's coming up. I have one class right now that doesn't have one, and I'm struggling really hard in that class. And I'm thinking about asking the professor for a calendar because it's been very difficult for me to get through it. I don't know what to expect. And for me, and I think probably for a lot of autistic people, because you grow up in a world where you expect one thing, but something else happens, and you are based on routine, it can be almost like traumatic to constantly be in a state of like, oh, what's next? So even though I should have an idea like that a module is coming, I don't know what that is. I don't know when it's coming. I don't know how to plan my week around it. I don't know how to plan my month around it. I don't know how to take the exam. It can be very scary. I think teaching with many different strategies, including things like models, videos, and I like lectures too, just plain lectures, that's fine. But, you know, including a lot of different things in there. And then I think we go to things that are more physical on a student by student basis, which includes, I think earmuffs during tests should be allowed. Maybe stimming tools, not obviously nothing too loud or anything, but you know, people click their pens throughout class. So I feel like you should be able to bring like even something like a chew toy or just something to fiddle with. And I do think that typing is really important as well, as Sarah brought up, that we should be able to do notes via, you know, several different ways. There's the Dragon program, and they have this funny little thing that goes over your mouth that you can purchase, and you can talk into it, and it'll write everything down. So, you know, for some people that might work. Not everyone. I don't use it, but you know, there's a lot of different ways to get this information down that aren't just perfectly writing. And also, I think that with autism and with other neurodiverse diagnoses, or lack of a diagnosis, as it were, there can be a lot of different challenges, including maybe like pain in certain areas. I have a cyst on my wrist. I have been unable to get it checked out. Well, okay, my doctor has seen it, but he didn't write a note at the time, and then the school wanted me to go back and see him, but he wanted $200 to just see me so that I could get a doctor's note, and I didn't have that. So I'm really grateful that my teachers will let me type, and they will let me wear wrist braces and things like that, even though I don't have a school-wide accommodation for it. So small things like that would be really, really helpful. Like, just give me a pass if I'm wearing my brace. Please don't make me write 10 pages by hand.
Thank you. And I really appreciate your very like realistic examples from your own experiences. Those are really helpful. So our last kind of planned question is, what advice would you give to neurodiverse students, kids who might be interested in studying STEM?
I hope that neurodiverse kids can come to understand that there are a lot of neurodiverse adults in science. There's a lot of us in science, and you're completely welcome here. It doesn't matter what your challenges have been in the past, and we can get through different things. We can help each other. And I think more than ever, there's resources now. And, I find it really inspiring, and I hope that the kids can too. I say take life, a day at a time, just because you might have had a difficult day yesterday. Maybe you had a meltdown, or you failed a test, or even like walked out of a test. It was frustrating, but that's not the end of the world. It's not the end of your career. You're very young. It's okay. It's all right. And I hope that you believe you can do it. And I did want to actually make a note, if we have time, about adults who found out later in life and maybe haven't gone to college yet. And that's where I came from. I did not go straight from high school to college. I had quite a circuitous route to college. I started college when I was 22. And I want to say to those adults who didn't figure it out until a bit later, that you have a lot more tools at your disposal now. You know better about who you are, and it's not too late to try. It'll never be too late. It's always a good time to go to college. It's always a good time to pursue your dreams and to be a scientist if that's what you want to be, that's who you want to be. We always need more of you guys. And I think it's a great idea to be seeking mentorship from your professors, a lot of whom went to college far after they had gone to high school. So that's it. Good luck, everyone.
Thank you so much. That was really very inspiring for both young students as well as students who might be thinking of entering into studying science later in life. So we're going to turn it over to our audience for open question and answer. These questions can be for Eleanor, Sarah, both of them. I will allow folks, you can feel free to unmute and turn on your videos if you're comfortable doing that to ask your questions. We can also read questions from the chat. So I'm going to pause speaking for a moment, see if anyone unmutes. Okay, we will start with some questions from the chat.
Hello.
Oh, hi, Lisa. Go ahead.
Hi, Eleanor. I congratulate you. Hi, I know you can't see me. I apologize. Bandwidth issues. But I just congratulate you. Organic chemistry and calculus, everything you're talking about, the earmuffs and such, you rock. You rock. I agree with you regarding the matters of earmuffs or typing, taking notes. This is such a thing that, things need to change and embrace the neurodiversity, and it just needs to change. And I understand what you're speaking about as far as the clicking of the pens, the things that you hear, anything that can kind of take you off track when you're trying to take a test. I myself experienced, some issues during the class and in the classroom itself with some changes, like you mentioned about the syllabus. It's good to have a syllabus. What's even more challenging is when the syllabus changes 3 times within a 6-week period. and that is just mass confusion. The other level is that, you know, when you have experiences of, I wear steel metal braces, and even though having the medical accommodations through the counselor at the university, you know, you mentioned about having to spend $200 just to go get a note, a doctor's note. That's just insane. And we just don't have the money. I had steel metal braces, had the doctor's note, had the counselor, disability, everything in check, still was subjected to sitting inside a classroom for 4 hours with only a 5-minute break. And it turned into a bad difficulty with a broken foot in 3 places. That,
Wow.
yeah, that was a higher price level that I'm still healing from. So, you know, with just a few credits left to complete the degree, my decision was not to go back to complete my degree because of these measures. So I congratulate you for hanging in there, but there are a lot of us that, you know, are experiencing these things, and it's,
Yeah.
money's tight, and when there are not exceptions to the rules, it puts us in these positions, unfortunately, and they must be changed. So bravo to you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lisa. I'm going to voice over a question that came from the chat, and then we will turn it over to Tamitha, who has her hand raised. So there was a question in the chat around thinking about this notion of teamwork. Eleanor, you mentioned how teamwork and group projects was always a challenge for you. And folks in the chat were kind of commenting on, can we rethink what it means to work in a team or to have teamwork? Does that have various meanings, and can it be done in different ways? So Eleanor or Sarah, do either of you have any ideas or response to that?
Sarah, do you have any thoughts on this?
Sarah,
You're
you're
muted.
unmute.
Can you repeat that question again about teamwork?
Yeah, some folks in the chat were just talking about, you know, are there other ways we can look at teamwork and what it means to be part of a team?
Yeah, for sure. So I teach classes that are completely autistic students with some ADHD students thrown in the mix. And so most of them experience similar challenges to what Eleanor has mentioned as far as teams are concerned. And so I put in the chat a little earlier, what I have done is created scaffolded group projects. So that means that we're checking in at different times throughout the quarter, which I know many people do. But we also do some of the group work in class. And even now, while we're on Zoom, we're doing that work in class. We go into breakout rooms, and then I go into the various rooms and check in with them, or I have a teaching assistant who also does that. I've also found it extremely helpful to have a list of group roles very clearly laid out with what the group role, what the role is, what type of person might do well in this role, what their strengths might be. And then they choose their roles at the beginning. And everyone in the group is a researcher, but then they have other roles as well. And so they know exactly what they're supposed to be doing in the group every step along the way, because they have that very clearly defined role, which helps. I also make sure that they talk about how are they going to communicate with each other. That's something that I really emphasize, that a lot of instructors don't emphasize that thing. What did Connie say? Something amazing. Oh yes, okay. And They are allowed to opt out of the group assignment, but they have to do the same assignment. And so, because that's, I mean, that's the outcome for the class. And that's true. Eleanor's probably found that true as well if she's opted out. Yes. And so it's a lot more work. With these things in place, I have not yet had a student opt out of the group work. They've found that if they've got that one role to focus on, that makes it a lot easier for them.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
I think everyone trying to play on one field and not really know, in classes where the teacher said, you need to figure out a leader, it's been very simple. In classes where it just said, form a group, get going, it has been very, very, very difficult. You don't know who's coordinating things. You don't know, different things like that. And I've tended to take that role, but I can feel, I guess, kind of used in situations where it's not explicitly stated that that needs to happen. I'm willing to do that work. It's just a matter of feeling like everybody's pulling their weight too. Like, yes, okay, I will lead the group. I will do most of the communication as far as like announcements go. But I don't want to feel like I'm stringing the group along as I have done, when I was younger. This is a very, it's that kind of common trope where it's like, oh, one person pulling along the rest of the group. And I don't like that feeling.
Yeah, that's a really good point that you make, Eleanor. Definitely having people choose their roles and stick to their roles is important. The other thing that I tell my students, and this is true across the board because I've done a lot of research and I'm also working on a Canvas teaching module for faculty on group work. The main complaint from students about group work is, I always do all the work. Every student says that. And so that can't be true, but that's what they say. So that's important for students to know that, so they know that everyone else is feeling that way too.
Thank you both for your responses. I'm going to invite Tamitha to unmute.
Hi, this is Tammy from the Do It program at the University of Washington, and also the neurotechnology for neurodiverse learners that we kicked off this summer. Sarah and Eleanor, I was going to ask you the same question you just answered, so I'm going to change my question. So as we've spent so much time on Zoom in the last 7 months, and probably will for at least the foreseeable future, are there any Zoom tips, anything you've learned over the last few months, that little nuggets that you could give us to take forward and use in our programs?
Well, I can tell you I'm using Microsoft Translator for educators whenever I use PowerPoint in Zoom, so that I have built-in captions, because Zoom doesn't have built-in captions, right? So I'm doing that. I'm making huge use of the breakout rooms for people to work, and they're using the whiteboards. So when I go around and I look, they're all working together using the whiteboards and sharing screens and stuff. But other than that, I don't know. You got anything, Eleanor?
I just know that the experience has been very frustrating, especially as a lab student. Unfortunately, my labs have all gone virtual, which I think is just a very bizarre feeling to me. And honestly, I've had this feeling before, like over summer and winter breaks, but I feel like a sense of mourning because I miss the building itself. I really miss the school. And sometimes I will literally go to the school and like touch the building because I miss it. So I don't have a lot to add to it except that, I guess I just understand that a lot of us are feeling really sad about it. And yeah, I'm sorry. I don't have a lot to add other than being sad about it.
That's a great perspective. Thank you for sharing, both of you.
Thank you for your question. We have Jason with his hand raised. Jason, feel free to unmute and ask your question.
Hi, this has been truly fantastic. I actually blew off another appointment that I had because I wanted to stick with you guys. This is fantastic. So my name is Jason Sansucci. I'm co-founder of a mentorship-based nonprofit called Neurodiversity Works to prepare neurodivergent students for careers in STEM. my question is on mentorship. So I'm curious, do you have a mentor? How important is mentorship for preparing neurodiverse students for careers? I know from, at least from mine, I've had a mentor a few my entire life, and I think it's a really great thing. I would love to get your thoughts, because ours is a mentorship-based program, and I just don't know if there's enough of those. And I would just love to hear your thoughts on mentors. Do you have one? How important is it? Thank you.
I do have a mentor. I have a couple of mentors. At least one of them I haven't yet met, but that's okay. We are working on that. But no, I think mentorship is extremely important. I mean, I know that I kind of iterated that in my little bonus answer, but I find the experience to be invaluable. I seek mentorship. I don't think I would be nearly as successful if it weren't for mentorship. I look for people with those experiences. In particular, I had a chemistry professor who did tell me that she was diagnosed with autism very late in her life. And, you know, it meant a lot to me to know this. I mean, it's one of those things where, like, oh, she's a lot like me, and I wanted to learn a lot from her. And then I had this day where I had just the worst time, and you guessed it, it was teamwork. It was terrible. It was actually 3 people, which is why it was such an issue, because I have an even harder time parsing out my teamwork strategy with 3 people involved. 2 is okay, 4 is okay, 3 not so much. And, you know, I sat down with her afterwards and I apologized, and we just talked about it for like 2 hours. And it was so important to me that she talked to me about what it was like to be a professor, to move forward in these kinds of careers. And it gave me a lot of confidence. I walked out of that meeting feeling really good, despite walking in, you know, pretty much in tears. I find the experience invaluable, and I have always been someone who really looked toward teachers. And I didn't realize it at the time, but I think that I really want to be a professor, and I want to be that kind of person for other people. So I think mentorship has really shaped how I feel about not just myself, but other people as well. And I do think that that's an invaluable opportunity. And I think there's always room for more. Absolutely.
Sarah, would you like to add anything?
For mentors, well, we have a peer mentor program at our college, so our students each have a peer mentor. So yes, we think they're invaluable. They do change their peer mentor every quarter, so their peer mentor really is a person to check in with weekly, a person to walk them through our program protocols, which is thinking about their class every week, thinking about staying on track, just kind of thinking about what's going on. So it's just kind of that cognitive support to keep thinking about things. So it's not that emotional mentor person really that you think about, someone who stays with you for years and years. But they definitely find it helpful, and it's kind of that bridge between the parent and just being on your own and going through classes yourself.
That's great. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your question, Jason. All right, we are coming to the end of our time. My colleague Cassie just put the webinar survey link into the chat. We use these surveys to improve our webinars for the future and to learn about topics our audience may be interested in finding out more about. So please take a moment to fill out that survey. I'm reading here, it says the creator has to open it. Oh, I may have to somehow, I don't know, fix something in that link. I apologize. I will later also just send an email out to everyone registered with a working link in case that's not working. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen one last time to let you know that we have 2 upcoming National Girls Collaborative Project webinars, Elevating Youth Voice in STEM Programming on October 6th, with Girl Up and the Chief Science Officers Program of Texas, and Picture a Scientist, bringing gender equity in science to the big screen with the filmmakers and one of the featured scientists from the film. So you can register for those upcoming webinars on the National Girls Collaborative Project website. We cannot thank Eleanor and Sarah enough for their time and wisdom and inspiration today. I know I have learned so much, and I look forward to continuing to learn. Thank you, everyone. Bye.